So about 100 years ago, are we together? The church started the teaching on justice and peace. This new tradition has opened the door to a theology of peace since the past 30 years, Pacem in Terris. The Second Vatican Council, the United States Catholic Bishops' Pastoral Letter, the statement of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria, CBCN, and various statements on war and violence are efforts of the Church to articulate the reality and possibility of the practice of the teaching of Jesus in the gospel on non-violence. Pacem in Terris expresses the cry of humanity for peace during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That is Cuban. Pope John the 23rd issued this document as the Church's strongest plea for peace. His 1963 Easter message was addressed to all men and women of goodwill. Pacem in Terris teaches that peace is founded on truth, built according to justice, vivified and integrated by charity, and put into practice in freedom. That is why peace and justice should actually go together. There can be no peace if there's no justice. It declares that every human is a person endowed with intelligence and free will, who has universal and inviolable rights and duties. Gaudium et Spes came out 2 years after Pacem in Terris, just before the Second Vatican Council. Pope Paul VI issued an historic address at the United Nations saying, "No more war. War never again. War never again." He declared on October 4th, 1965, the feast of Francis of Assisi. At the height of the Cold War, he sent a strong message to the Second Vatican Council about the theme of Gaudium et Spes. Pope John the 23rd Pacem in Terris laid the foundation for peace that Pope Paul VI took seriously in Gaudium et Spes. This pastoral constitution on the church in the modern world was ratified on December 7, 1965. Looking at the world in a global context, the church beams a searchlight on the joys, hopes, grief, and anguish of humanity and called forth a new vision of love. In Gaudium et Spes, Jesus' command to love enemies is stated as a foundational mandate. In Populorum Progressium, the development of peoples, 1967, Pope Paul VI says that the superfluous wealth of rich countries should be placed at the service of poor nations. I told you just now that you can't have peace without justice. Are you hearing me? Okay. So to struggle against injustice is to promote the common good. Peace is not the mere absence of war, he declared. So the Latin American Bishops' Conference, CELAM, states that structural justice is a prerequisite for peace. Octogesima Adveniens, Pope Paul VI, 1971. Justice in the World, the Synod of Bishops, 1971. Evangelii Nunciandi, Pope Paul VI, 1975. The Ceylon Conference at Puebla, 1979. And Santo Domingo, 1992. So affirm non-violence according to the teaching of Jesus Christ in the Gospels. So the post-Vatican II episcopal collegiality gives a clarion call to non-violence and justice. In 1979, Pope John Paul II, the great saint, emphasizes this in his encyclical Redemptor Hominis. In Laborem Exeges, 1981, Pope John Paul II suggested that we take responsibility for injustice and encourage the poor to overcome oppression. In Solicitudo Rei Socialis, 1988, he critiques the structures of sin and called for conversion to peace and justice. Are we together? So, the practical witness to nonviolence of Mahatma Gandhi, Dorothy Day, and Martin Luther King still remain vivid in the memory of the 20th century generation to our present era. On February 25, 1981, Pope John Paul II stood before 10,000 people at Peace Memorial Park in Hiroshima, Japan, and told them that to remember Hiroshima is to abhor nuclear war. To remember Hiroshima is to commit oneself to peace. War is a work of humanity. War is destruction of human life. War is death. Humanity is not destined to self-destruction. Clashes of ideologies, aspirations, and needs can and must be settled and resolved by means other than war and violence. Humanity owes it to itself to settle differences and conflict by peaceful means. Let us not repeat the past, a past of violence and destruction. Let us embark upon the steep and difficult path of peace, the only path that benefits or befits human dignity, the only path that leads to the true fulfillment of the human destiny, the only path to a future in which equity, justice, and solidarity are realities and not just distant dreams. Let us pledge ourselves to peace through justice. Let us take a solemn decision now that war will never be tolerated or sought as a means for resolving differences. Let us promise our fellow human beings that we will work entirely for disarmament and the banishing of all nuclear weapons. Let us replace violence and hate with confidence and caring. To everyone, I repeat the words of the prophet. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Isaiah 2:4. 3 days before the U.S. began the slaughter of Iraq, John Paul II begged upon humanity to outlaw war completely and cultivate peace as a supreme good. This is what the church is saying about nonviolence, using the Christian principles. So I will conclude. Following the challenge of peace in accordance to the gospel and the spirit of nonviolent saints like St. Justin, St. Cyprian, St. Matthew of Tours, St. Francis of Assisi, Mahatma Gandhi, Dorothy Day, and Martin Luther King, we of this generation, we who have been called and chosen to be missionaries to ourselves, our nation, and to the outside world, must start the teaching of nonviolence by our way of life. Our missio ad intra must start from the conversion of our personal violent inclinations to empower us with the necessary capacity to do missio ad extra. That is mission within and mission outside. Our very presence must convince the world that we mean what we are saying. The most practical way of doing this is to go often into our interior castle to root out the weeds of anger in our hearts. In our mission land, we may live in communities where the people would watch and see how we cope with each other and one another. Many of us carry about the hurts and wounds we have received from our neighbors. Many of us keep malice and wait for the slightest opportunity to revenge, forgetting that someone out there may also be suffering from our injustice and wickedness. We easily forget that someone out there is having a bleeding heart because of us. On the global level, the world is becoming more and more sophisticated. In the past, we hear of people fighting with sticks, knives, bow and arrows. Today, we talk of weapons of mass destruction like nuclear arms, chemical weapons, biological weapons, landmines, cluster bombs, assassination drones, depleted uranium, white phosphorus shells, heavy bombs, fuel explosives, particle weapons, and other exotic weapons. Today, the church is fighting for the control of world trade in arms and armaments. We must join our voices and actions to the effort of the church in animating the world powers on the need to develop non-violent means of defense. Sure, you heard of what happened in Sri Lanka recently? Okay. I just called Father Iduni yesterday to condole with him. He's from Sri Lanka, and he's an official in the Pontifical Council, that is PCID in the Vatican. We need to be involved in conflict resolution and conflict transformation wherever we may find ourselves on mission. When we find this difficult, let us remember that of all the apostles of Jesus Christ, only John the Beloved died a natural death. So we shouldn't be afraid to die for the cause of peace. Whether we die peacefully on our water beds, or orthopedic beds, or killed in the process of peace and means sure of non-violence, death is a necessary end which will come when it will come, according to Shakespeare. Be among those who share the Lord's benediction. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. So we need to be peacemakers. Don't belong to the dividers. Don't belong to the conflict profiteers, those who gain by conflict. Let us belong to the group of connectors. And as you go out on mission, I pray that the peace in your heart will flow to others. And I would like you to join me in this song. Peace is flowing like a river, flowing out of you and me, flowing out into the desert, setting on the God's will. Thank you for